The greatest cartoon characters of all time, classic television, exciting football in the spring. This is the USCFL Network, celebrating 40 years of excellence.
Let's get ready to rumble!
YouTube, the American Association of Animation and First and 10 Productions presents the USCFL pregame show. An inside look into the United States Cartoon Football League and a preview of tonight's featured game, right here on the USCFL Network, presented by Robbie Graham.
Greetings, cartoon and football fans, and especially fans of She-Ra. This is Robbie Graham of the USCFL Network, welcoming you to the start of Season 4 of the new She-Ra series. For the new She-Ra, it's sudden death overtime. Beginning now, she has 13 chances to catch up to her Filmation counterpart. If she goes below 160 total points, it's over. The new She-Ra scored 79 points in the episode runoff against the original She-Ra. To make up the difference, we will do full reviews of Season 4. The same scoring system applies here as it did in the episode runoff. Again, if the new She-Ra is unable to tie or beat the original She-Ra score, it's over. In a moment, we will begin to review Season 4 of the new series. And remember, we invite you here on YouTube to participate. Your score could help the new She-Ra stay in this competition. If you do participate, remember to give a score of 0, 2, 3, 6, 7, or 8 points for each episode. And now, here is our first ever review of any cartoon show. For our records, the episodes are still going to be aired in chronological order, and therefore, the first episode of Season 4 will be talked about as Episode 27. I also want to explain about the margin of error. As you saw in the intro, the new She-Ra has a 23-point margin of error between the 104 points she could possibly score to the 81 points she needs to score. And this is how it will work. Assuming, let's say, for example, that the first episode of this Season 4 is perfect and gets a score of 8 points. The point differential will drop, but the margin of error will not. However, let's say this first episode gets a score of 6 points. That means that the point differential will drop by 6 points, but the margin of error will decrease to 2 points. And again, if that margin of error goes down to 0 or below it, that's it. The tournament is over with. And we'll see what happens as we start reviewing these episodes one by one. We're going to do 2 episodes a week. My senior and junior moderators have been instructed to either watch or listen to each episode of Season 4 and give their score from 0 to 8. I am going to do the same. However, my review will sound more like a highlight reel, and that's pretty much how it will sound, but my score will also count as well. And remember, for all of you on YouTube, please, if you wish to make a comment and a score about each episode that we put up, by all means, give us your score. And if your score is higher than what we give, then that score will count. Remember, higher score prevails. It worked that way in the episode runoff. It'll work that way here. And now, without any further delay, here are my moderators' comments and my own comments about the first episode of Season 4. We're going to begin our reviews of Season 4 with the first episode. Again, we're calling it Episode 27, and it's titled The Coronation. First, I'm going to read to you the review that my senior moderator gave about this episode. He wrote, and I quote, "This episode showed major character development on the part of Glimmer, who is to be crowned queen of Bright Moon following the death of her mother, Queen Angela, who sacrificed herself at the end of Season 3 to forestall the Horde's latest plot. Glimmer finds herself upset because it seems like nobody wants to talk about her mother's sacrifice. All her courtiers want to do is approve the plans for the coronation. Fortunately, there is a ritual quest that must be undertaken before she can be crowned as queen to take her mind off her loss. She is allowed to take 2 companions on her quest and chooses Adora and Bo. Together, the 3 complete the quest, and Glimmer is comforted with an encounter with her mother's spirit. Meanwhile, Catra and Hordak are at loggerheads. He blames her for the failure of the last plan and is not interested in her ideas for the next attack on the rebellion. However, Catra is able to remove a power crystal from his armor, and in his natural weakened state, he is forced to agree to allow her to enact her plans. I give this episode a 6. It was easy to follow, and there was quite a bit of character and plot development. Now, here is my review on the same episode. And I wrote as follows. The episode begins on the morning of a special day in Bright Moon. The day Glimmer becomes queen. Castaspella busts into Glimmer's room and told her to go to the war room only to choose a type of cake to be served at the coronation, for which Glimmer chose ice cream cake. I guess you can't go wrong with that. It seems after the end of Season 3, Glimmer got taller and thinner. I admit she doesn't look half bad. Apparently, Glimmer must go on a quest of sorts in order to become queen. Makes me wonder if Elizabeth had this much trouble when she was crowned queen. Out in the courtyard, Frosta showed Glimmer ice sculptures of herself and Glimmer in oversized bodies. Castaspella was acting like an overzealous arranger. Glimmer chose Mermista to do flower arrangements when it should have been Perfuma's job. Bo was given a scroll that it seems like a how-to guide for coronations. Then in the Fright Zone, Hordak was giving Catra more grief. When she mentioned Entrapta's name, Hordak went ballistic. Then back at Bright Moon, Adora and Bo found the coronation robe that looked like 4 people could fit into. Bo goes nuts when he can't figure out the scroll. Then Shadow Weaver comes in to offer her great congratulations, but in her weirdish kind of way. Frosta freezes Seahawk, and Swiftwind found this sacred lantern needed for the ceremony in his obnoxious way, while 4 people were talking over each other to Glimmer. And of course, the ice sculpture of Glimmer literally loses her head. Glimmer yells to everyone to stop talking all at once as she was getting upset. Back in the Fright Zone, Catra approaches Scorpia to clean out a storage room, which I later found out was where Entrapta kept her stuff. Catra crushes an object in her hand at the mention of Adora's name. She goes as far as scratching a wall next to Scorpia's head. Back in Bright Moon, the ceremony begins as Glimmer finally looks like royalty, approaches a gateway that looks like a waterfall. Cassispella reads from the scroll, pointing out that Glimmer is to perform a ritual known as the Quest of Queens, with Bo and Adora accompanying her. Mermista opens the waterway as they walk inside. After going through a cavern, they enter a room known as the Chamber of Queens. Then a large worm-like creature enters the room. Glimmer drops the lantern as they temporarily escape from the monster, although Bo fails to mention until that point that a creature would guard the room. Then Glimmer reveals that she hadn't been recharging herself because she felt that if she did, she would betray her mother's memory. She even began to cry because her mother is gone and feels as if no one cares. Funny, Glimmer was at odds with Angela for 3 seasons. Adora comforts Glimmer, letting her know that Angela's final words were for Adora to take care of and look after her. When Glimmer gets her second win, Adora becomes She-Ra for only the second time in 4 episodes and kicks the monster's ass. Bo shoots arrows at it along with an arrow that temporarily gums up its mouth. Then Glimmer puts the lantern into a hole that signals the ghost of her mother. The monster becomes docile and slithers away. Angela's image was a hologram as she told Glimmer how proud she was of her and that she would make a great ruler. When the 3 emerge from the cavern, they return to the castle to find everything perfect. The decorations on the walls, perfect flower arrangements, and 2 ice sculptures of Glimmer and Angela. Cassispella tells Glimmer that it's time. Glimmer walks to what looks like an altar or throne and makes a speech that everyone within hearing range cheers for. Back in the Fright Zone, another speech is made, this time by Catra. Catra sitting on Hordak's throne, she rips the gem out of his chest, immobilizing him. With a different outfit and hairstyle of her own, Catra makes an offer that Hordak can't refuse to crush the rebellion, and the episode ends there. In my opinion, this episode wasn't bad at all. It even brought to a tear to my eye, especially when Angela tells Glimmer that she's proud of her and that she loves her. And when Glimmer made the speech to the royal court. Catra is becoming a little witch, and as she now seems to be calling the shots. Unless both of my moderators and you on YouTube give this episode a higher score, I also give it 6 points. And if the score stands, the new She-Ra will now have a total of 85 points, and still with a 75-point differential deficit, and now a margin of error of 21 points. And remember, higher score prevails. In a moment, our reviews of episode 28. For what we're calling episode 28, The episode is called The Valley of the Lost. And here's my senior moderator's take on this episode. He wrote, quote, "This episode advances the plot points that are going to become important later in the season. Glimmer sends Adora, Bo, Perfuma, and Huntara into the Crimson Waste, Huntara's former stomping grounds, in an attempt to recover Mara's spaceship, which was lost during Season 3. Huntara is very judgmental, deriding the others for being soft, self-satisfied that her life in the waste has made her tough enough to overcome any obstacle. Perfuma is flummoxed because her floral powers do not reliably work on cacti. When the group arrives in Huntara's hometown, they find that the Horde is now controlling it and that the Horde has already recovered the ship. Huntara discovers that her former allies have switched allegiance to the Horde and are very happy to betray their former companion. Meanwhile, a new character, Double Trouble, makes its appearance. It is a shape-shifting mercenary elf who is eager to sell its talents to the Horde. Catra assigns Double Trouble to copy her and battle She-Ra, who does not recognize that she is not facing the real Catra. Catra is already planning how she can use Double Trouble's talents to further her plans. I give this episode a 6. Perfuma and Huntara experience character growth, and the union of Catra and Double Trouble promises bad things are going to happen to the rebellion when Catra's evil plans are finalized. And now, here is my take on the same episode. I wrote as follows. Just like after the president is sworn in and the inaugural ball takes place, he gets down to business. In the second episode of Season 4, Glimmer gives her first royal command as queen. She grabs Mermista through teleportation and orders her, Adora, Bo, and Huntara to the Crimson Waste to recover the spaceship that brought Mara, the previous She-Ra, back to Bright Moon. Adora points out to Glimmer that Mermista's powers won't work in the desert, so Glimmer pops out with Mermista and brings back Perfuma, whose flower power will work in the desert. In the desert, Perfuma tries to make a cactus bigger, only to get, I guess what you would call aloe vera juice, exploding in her face. Then Bo uses a water arrow to wash Perfuma off, only for her to get mad that she can't get a hold on cacti. I admit that this is clever. Adora is carrying her sword like a bracelet. It certainly beats it as it was hovering on her back without a sheath. In the original series, Adora and She-Ra both pulled out the sword from behind their backs. In Adora's case, the sword is like invisible. In She-Ra's case, her long hair or her cape could have concealed it. Bo souped up a communicator to keep in touch with Glimmer. When they get to the spot where Mara's ship was located and was moved by the Horde, Huntara confirmed it by tasting the sand. Adora also tastes the sand and spits it out. I hate it when sand gets in my shoes at the beach, but in my mouth, no way. The show gives us our first glimpse of a character called Double Trouble. In the original series, Double Trouble never appeared, but an action figure was made in which it was a female figure. Turns out that Double Trouble is a non-binary character who can change its appearance at will and can blink sideways, which is kind of creepy. How anyone who could drag a spaceship that must weigh several tons would be hard to move. Huntara shows the others her hometown, an area known as the Valley of the Lost. Cozy place unless you're Al Capone. Perfuma saved Huntara from a possible confrontation with her former allies. Moments later, Scorpia drops a box of junk that Catra told her off. But another Scorpia shows up, the real Scorpia. Catra asks the fake Scorpia who she really is and morphs into another Catra, scaring her. A former friend of Huntara's sold her out to the Horde and had to hide. This person is a female but certainly doesn't look it. As Bugs Bunny once said, she may not be pretty now, but she was somebody's baby once. Adora becomes She-Ra and tells Perfuma to block the passage by making a cactus bigger, only for it to give Perfuma a bunch of spikes. As an old joke goes, how do you handle a cactus? Very carefully. As Adora becomes She-Ra again and her transformation sequence was shown, I said the original transformation will give you goosebumps. I don't know what this gives. She-Ra, along with the others, took out a bunch of Horde soldiers. But with Huntara's help, Perfuma discovered the cacti have the strongest root system she had ever seen and raised the ship from being underground. Glimmer arrives late, but Adora told her that her first act as queen was successful. She-Ra captured Catra, only to discover at the end of the episode that it was Double Trouble posing as her. I also admit that the new She-Ra is getting better with using her sword as other objects. This Double Trouble is making some kind of actor or actress, making out like some kind of actor or actress, but in all fairness, if it's looking for an Oscar, it would be sad to learn that it would get a Razzie instead. As a score for this episode could have been better in my opinion. I give it just 2 points. But since my senior moderator gave it 6 and higher score prevails, we will go by that scoring. And unless you on YouTube give this episode an even higher scoring, we will augment it for next weekend's rounds. So at the end of the second round, the new She-Ra has now got a score of 91 points with a 69-point differential deficit and now a 19-point margin of error. And until next weekend, I remain humbly, obediently yours. Goodbye for now.